Hi guys, welcome to another edition of Radio 815, episode number 13. I'm your host, my name is Marcelo Inestroza, joined as always with my co-host Matt Crandall. And on this edition of the show, we'll be talking about the back half of Alias Season 2. Today we'll be discussing episodes 13 through 21. So with all that pomp and circumstance out of the way, Matt, tell me what you liked about the back half of Alias Season 2.
So, the back half kicks off with episode 13, phase 1, written by J.J. Abrams, directed by Jack Bender. And for me, this was the big Super Bowl episode where they wanted to broaden the horizon of Alias, get new viewers. And this is kind of like the quintessential everything that Alias does well happens in this episode. It starts in amazing fashion with AC/DC's Back in Black as Jennifer Garner comes out looking the hottest she has ever looked, wearing black lingerie on an airplane, and she does this slow, sexy walk as AC/DC's blaring, and then she comes out and the guy goes, "Nah, try the red one." Cut to her doing the same walk, wearing a different lingerie before she kicks all those guys' butts. But then somebody comes out and shoots at what seems like Sydney. Cut to black, Alias, and then we go 24 hours or 48 hours earlier, which of course that starting with something and then doubling back is a J.J. Abrams and Alias signature. And in this back half, there's 3 episodes that do it. But phase 1 really does it in a memorable way. And this is where everything starts to change because Sloan is MIA. Rutger Hauer guest stars as the new head of SD6 who's been sent in by the Alliance to investigate what's going on. He discovers that Jack and Sydney are double agents. They discover a ton of information about the Alliance, and with Dixon's help, they verify some information so that they can actually take down all of the SD cells in one fell swoop. And by the end of this episode, SD6 and all of the Alliance are over. Sydney, Jack, everybody from SD6 has come over to the CIA, which is, for a show that literally is only a year and a half old, it completely changed the format. The double agent stuff is gone. And now they have gone legit. I think that is amazing. The action in this episode is so good. And everybody gets something to do, including Francie, who, in a shocking twist at the end, we see is murdered and has been replaced by a double, which is some sci-fi next level kind of JJ trickery that he's pulling off. But I think the back half of this season is much more satisfying than the first, and everything just kicks off in huge fashion with phase 1 and the amazing scene between Sydney and Dixon when she tells him the truth and asks for his help. Is the emotional payoff for their relationship is huge. And Sydney and Vaughn finally kiss and confess their love for each other. And the whole series just shifts in this new way. And then in typical JJ fashion, just when we think the good guys have won, we find out that everything that happened in this episode was all a manipulation of the one, the only Arvin Sloan.
I knew something big was going to happen because you were teasing it all last week.
Yeah.
But I was like, first of all, for JJ to open up episode 13 like he did with the beautiful Jennifer Gardner basically playing dress up to that Russian twig, that mobster guy. I was like, okay, I'm feeling this, but it was kind of funny. He put it on a plane. The thing that I was really surprised about and sort of shocked about in this episode is that when it's all revealed that my favorite least character in Alias history was behind this whole thing, that really irked me
Yeah.
to the point of like, I cannot wait until you get yours. But an interesting point that was brought up or that was revealed in later episodes in the back half is that Sloane has been obsessed with this Rambaldi myth for the past 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that it's interesting that he justifies his actions, everything that he's done, he justifies it by finding a cure for his, what we thought, for his deceased wife. I'm like, okay, so you're justifying your horrible deeds like this right now, but how did you justify them to yourself before your wife got cancer?
Right.
So I'm like, it can't work like that. Either you're saying that you're justifying your reasons because of this, or you don't really care for national security. You don't care for the protection of America. What you care about is your own selfish reasons. So don't tell me you're trying to justify it because of your wife's illness. I thought that was a very, very interesting wrinkle that they decided to give Sloane's character in the second half. And it did kind of make him a little bit endearing. If only for a second. I don't want anyone I don't want anyone thinking who listens to the show on the regular
on
the regular that I'm Team Sloane, but it did make me feel for him, especially those impactful scenes with his wife in that episode where basically Sloane's wife, basically decides to stand up to him and say, "Listen, I want some explanations. Enough is enough. What in the world is going on here?" And to the point where she gets tired of it and she goes to the CIA and speaks to Sydney about it, right?
Yeah.
And then, Sydney has her put on a wire and tries to make her set up Sloane, right? To the to the point where Sloane and her try and get away in a copter, and then one of the biggest surprises for me is what happens shortly after that with Dixon, and the fact that his decision to do what he does really affects the rest of his character story thread throughout the whole series. And the other thing that I found really shocking and really disappointing is the betrayal that Irina laid on Jack and Sydney. I'm like, really? All this crap that you were feeding us was bullshit from moment one? Are you telling me that everything you fed to me, I believed it, and you still did it this way? I was like, fool me once, good on you. Fool me twice, good on you. Fool me again, you're unredeemable at this point. So at this point, when Sydney shoots her mother again, I won't shed a tear if she aims right this time and shoots her in the head. Because what she's done, she can justify any way she wants. But at this point she is squarely on my shit list for the rest of her existence on the show. Also, I found it really interesting that in this back half they did something that you were calling for, Matt, in the first half. They really did a good job with flipping Marcy's character and giving a lot of material for Dixon and Will in this second half. And I was really happy and I was really pleased to see that, especially because I wanted to hear your thoughts about what you thought about the way that they treated those specific characters in this second half, since you were so not pleased with the way that the writers were handling them in the first half.
Yeah, I think that the supporting cast got a lot more to do in the back half, especially, with Sydney's roommate being replaced by a double. So we got to see a different side of her, which was really nice. As Will it gets into the CIA and starts being an analyst, and by the end of this part of the season, he's been framed by the double. And so he's in a lot of trouble, so he gets more to do, and Dixon gets like so much stuff because when he finds out, from Sydney that he's been on the wrong team this whole time, and he's so betrayed. There's those couple of episodes where he's really struggling with it, and we check in with him where he doesn't think that he can ever forgive Sydney, and he's done with espionage. And then we see him finally realize the position that Sydney was actually in when the tables are sort of turned for him. And Carl Lumley really does some nice acting in those moments where he realizes it wouldn't have been as easy, and that Sydney actually has been carrying this heavy burden. And even if she does trust him and love him, she couldn't tell him, as a friend, the truth, because it would put him in more danger and endanger her and her father. So I thought that was awesome where he comes to realize that. And then, of course, as the season unfolds, and he is the one who ends up taking out Emily, and then in retaliation, Sloane gets Dixon's wife murdered, which just feels like, a lot of eye for an eye, everybody's wife is getting murdered kind of stuff. But it really shakes up his character and changes the dynamic. So I really like that. And especially in that episode where Dixon feels like he has nothing left to lose, man, Carl Lumley got to do some really good acting. And that was one that started, and then it was like a 5 days previous, and we caught up to the action and seeing how he got to that place. And then in the end where he still is, he hasn't flipped, he hasn't lost his mind. And he says like, I'm okay. It's, you guys don't have to worry about me. Was really nice. And as you were talking about Irina's arc, super interesting because just when we thought we could trust her, she does betray them, and it is for a Rambaldi artifact. So, this Rambaldi thing came back full steam ahead. But then also Sydney gets that message through the earrings. Truth takes time. So there is still shades of doubt in our mind. Is Irina unredeemable, or is there going to be something more? Is she ready to flip the script again? Or is she in too deep with Sloane and the bad guys and Sark to ever come back from that? But I also, the supporting characters got some good stuff, but they got some awesome guest stars in this season as well. Ethan Hawke kicked ass in that episode. The double agent, written by Kurtzman and Orsi, where, we aren't sure if he can be trusted, if he's a double or not. And it was fun to have Ethan Hawke playing kind of like a Jason Bourne type alongside Sydney. That was really good. Then we get an episode also written by Kurtzman and Orsi, and I think it was Kurtzman's directorial debut, a free agent, that Christian Slater is the main guest star, and he's playing a guy from, the NSA who's got this information, who's getting tortured, and I thought that was great. And then later, the second last episode or whatever, or the third last, we get so many guest stars. Danny Trejo shows up, David Carradine, Kill Bill shows up, and Amanda Foreman finally makes her appearance on Alias. Megan is on it, and her and Marshall immediately have a spark. And Jonathan Banks, friggin' Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, basically stepping in as the NSA equivalent of Terry O'Quinn. So having, these heavy hitters alongside our cast really was awesome. I thought it just shows the quality of this show that such good people wanted to be on it.
I was really surprised and delighted, is the word, that first of all, when Handsome Hawk showed up in Double Agent, I was like, that's Handsome Hawk. I'm like, yeah. What? So I was like one of my favorite episodes was that episode
Yeah,
double
he's
agent.
solid.
I really, really enjoyed that show. In part because it was written by my guys, as you
Yep.
mentioned, but the performance that uh, Ethan gives in that episode is just great.
Hmm.
For my money. And the thing I love about that episode is the way that it starts. I mean, you know, with that other agent of the CIA being tricked and then being wrapped up in the C4, and then being basically dropped at the French equivalent of the CIA. And
Yep.
then, when she sings that creepy song, I'm like, when she starts singing Pop Goes the Weasel, I'm like, she's gonna blow up.
Yeah, you know it's coming. You know it's coming.
So I thought that was a brilliant conceit and a brilliant setup by Bob and Alex, and I just love the writing on that episode. The episode with Christian Slater, you mentioned that you thought it was Alex's directorial debut. It was actually.
Yeah, I
Um,
figured it was.
I was very surprised because I didn't remember that he actually directed in Alias, but I was very surprised and I was very delighted by what he did in this particular episode. One sequence that I thought he directed awesomely and fairly and very very well is the standoff in the bank with Sydney and Sloane.
Hmm.
There is this shot with Sydney pointing her pistol at Sloane, and the pistol is in the foreground. The foreground, and Sydney is out of focus in the background.
Hmm.
So I thought that was I just thought that was a ballsy way to shoot it. And that episode in particular made me very, very happy. I don't know if you'll be able to guess why, Matt, but it made me very, very happy. And if you guess why correctly, then you're really on the way to knowing me right. But I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. It's kind of hard to pick it out why I like it so much.
I'm not sure, man. You tell me.
All right. Well, the reasons why I like the reason why I like the episode so much is it's directed by Alex, but Sloane has to wear a mask
I was
for
gonna say, tell me it's not Sloane's makeup.
no. I know. It's exactly that. I hate Sloane,
Yeah.
but I love the use of the disguise.
Mhm.
And when he rips it off in the back of the car, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, that's totally Mission. He
No,
ripped
big
it off,
Yeah.
right? I look. I understand if you don't like the makeup, but that's a total Mission thing, and you had to know in the back of your head, he's gonna like that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But I thought this second half of Alias season 2 was way more enjoyable, to back up one of your opening points, because, like you mentioned, they pick up the revolving thing at full speed. Sloane is basically alone now, a man on a mission, and he has nothing to live for anymore.
Right.
And the fact that he thought about leaving this Rambaldi quest behind after his wife basically gave him the ultimatum of, if you don't stop chasing this myth, I'm gonna leave you. And the fact that he was almost there, but that his wife didn't give him the option to do that. He was gonna do that, but because of what Emily did, he couldn't do it. So I almost felt really bad for him in some aspects. Again, I don't want our viewers to think that I'm on Team Sloane,
Right.
but there were instances in the second half that I really felt sympathy for Sloane, and I felt kind of bad for Sloane. Also, one of the moments that I didn't understand and I was very confused about is when Sydney comes out to Dixon again, by the oil field, I was really confused because I thought that Sydney had already confessed to Dixon, but the way that that scene played out, it seemed to me that Dixon had forgotten that conversation that they had in season one, or am I just having like this tremendous brain hemorrhage and I'm forgetting something here?
No, you're not wrong. But in season one, basically, he said, "What is going on?" And their talk was, she said, like, "You have to trust me and just know that what I'm doing is in your best interest and is not. I'm not going against the good guys." And they had that heart to heart, but she didn't explicitly tell him everything. Whereas in this one, she says, "I'm a double agent. You were right, but you've been working for the bad guys the entire time, and I need you to trust me, because if you don't help me, then the bad guys are going to win." So I think that was, it very much echoed that scene from the season one finale, but it was much more explicit in terms of, you have been working for the bad guys and you've been duped this whole time. Whereas at season one, it was more like I can't tell you everything now, but just trust me that I am not bad,
Mm-hmm. Also, a standout performance in the second half. I said it in our review of the first half in our last episode, but Sark continues to be a delightful sleazebag, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, you love to hate him, and he's just like, every time he does something sneaky, you're just like, "Oh, that son of a bitch." But it's in a good way. So I really liked that, he got a lot more screen time because of his dealings with Sloane and Irina as everything starts to come to a head. And one thing, Vaughn and Sydney finally, confessed their feelings for each other, and they were together. And then they throw that wrench in during the back half where Vaughn is being investigated by Richard Lewis for a possible abuse of power. And, Sydney, it throws some distrust into the mix, which was kind of interesting. But also, they're spending an episode and a half on something when I know so many people have been double agents and so much backstabbing that Vaughn couldn't possibly have actually been bad. So it was like, okay, I'm willing to go along with this story, but I know that the payoff is going to be Vaughn vindicated. So I wasn't a huge fan of that, but like, I get why they did it, to sort of cast some doubt and, shake up the relationship without breaking them up completely, to keep that side of the story interesting. But I also, having Marshall get a love interest when Amanda Foreman shows up was amazing. And the way that those two click was hilarious. And it's just good to see Marshall. Dixon was shell-shocked when he found out about SD6. And then we cut to Marshall, and he's just hanging out with the geeks at the CIA. And they're talking about tech secrets and all the cool stuff Marshall did against them. And that scene was amazing, just to see. He just rolls with the punches, and he's just happy to be there no matter what. He doesn't even dwell on the fact that, he was working against the good guys for so long. He's able to just compartmentalize it and move on. Although there's one funny line where he's like, talking about how he can simultaneously start weeping at any moment, but he's getting over it. And I thought that was great because Kevin Weissman kicks ass. And Greg Grunberg was mostly absent, but he made a few memorable appearances. Especially, he got a couple of funny lines where, Sydney calls Weiss, and she's like, "Have you seen Vaughn? I need to talk to Vaughn." And he's like, "Do you ever just call Vaughn and say, 'Where's Weiss? I need to talk to Weiss'? Like, am I just your conduit to Vaughn?" And I thought that was great, letting Grunberg, get a little bit of Sean isms sort of in there with that scene.
To go back to your point about Sydney being put up against Vaughn when Sydney is called in to basically get interrogated about Agent Vaughn's activities for the last couple months. I really didn't buy that for a second either, because I was like, Vaughn to this point has been pretty much of a Boy Scout
Right.
to go off of his call sign. And like he hasn't been one to betray Sydney, if at all. And I think that it would have been really bad if the writers came up for some nefarious reason for Vaughn to betray Sydney, because I think at that point Sydney would have broke like a twig, because first having Sloane do it to her, and then which led to the loss of Danny, which I'll get to in a second. I just want to bring up one little thing about him here.
Yeah.
And I think that she would have been broken forever. And if Vaughn betrayed her for whatever reason. And it was kind of nice knowing that Vaughn took it upon himself to prove the innocence of the woman who killed his father.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have done that personally. I would have wanted to throw her down a pit somewhere.
Yeah.
and just let her rot there for all time.
Right.
But that's just me. I'm very vengeful. For those people that do me wrong. So I thought that was like a nice little scene. I thought that was a nice little a nice little twist, but it didn't really hit with me like it didn't hit with you. I thought it was disposable. I was like, whatever.
Because if they had done it, it would have been a twist too many. Like they would have been overplaying their, anything can happen on this show unexpectedly hand. So I think we never really thought that it was possible that Vaughn was betraying everyone behind their back.
Right. Now, to go back to the point I was going to make about Danny for a second. When Sydney and Vaughn go into that full tilt of them being romantically involved, and we see kissing, and I'm like, I like you guys, but I'm like, I know I'm gonna have to put up with this for 5 years, but I'm not feeling it right now. Can you just not?
Can you hit pause?
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that made me think of something else. The way that Sydney's and Vaughn's relationship takes off in the second half, I don't think that she's ever talked once about her. I don't think she's talked once about Danny. She's never brought up Danny to Vaughn, not once, right?
Right.
And I'm like, look, I know the guy was here for like 2 seconds, and he was kind of a MacGuffin. Yeah. But I'm like, shouldn't you just bring him up once? Because in Alias time frame, he's been dead for a year, and 1 year passes by, and you shack. Look, I'm gonna sound cruel, but 1 year passes by, and you shack up with this guy.
Right.
I'm like,
yeah, it is true.
Yeah, but I was like, shouldn't it just take a little longer? Just give me a little bit more rope, and then I could have. It's not that I don't buy the Sydney and Vaughn relationship. Well, damn it, I'm having a little trouble right now. I'm not gonna say I don't buy it, but I'm saying I'm having a little trouble. I don't know how you feel about this, Matt, but I'm having a little trouble. And the trouble that I'm having here is that I don't see Sydney displaying remorse for what happened to Danny for one split second while she's with Vaughn. If she had one conversation talking about Danny with Vaughn, I would have said, fine, I'm happy, go and do what you want now. But since she didn't do that, I was like, so what about that? So what about the guy that you were going to spend the rest of your life with? The guy that you almost killed Sloane for?
Now her and Vaughn never had that talk, but she did kind of have that talk with Rutger Hauer in that one episode where he comes in, and before it's revealed that she's a double agent, and he says, like, how can you still work here? Because aren't we the ones who killed your fiance? And then she says, well, I killed him because I was the one who broke the rules and told the stuff. And you can see like the pain and the anguish sort of on her face. So I feel like they thought, we can't dwell on it forever. And especially in TV land, remember at the time, and still, whenever like a show is really popular, people are always shipping for like the leads to get together. So I'm sure there was pressure from outside sources for the leads to get together. And if she kept doting on her dead ex-fiance, it would just be a real buzzkill for everybody. The most realistic thing, because yeah, in real life, I think that there would be a lot more baggage and emotions still to deal with, but I think they're glossing over it just for the sake of, the entertainment factor.
No, I totally understand that, and that's totally valid. But just for me right now,
Yeah, it
I'm not.
kills that buzz for you.
Yeah, I'm not. Look, and you know me, Matt. And you know that I'm a Dawson Joy fan, so I love myself a good romantic relationship. You know I do.
Yeah.
But I'm not feeling it, and I think that I'm gonna just have to enjoy the show, from the prism of them going on missions together and not their romantic entanglements, because that doesn't interest me as shocking as that sounds from a guy whose favorite show is Dawson's Creek, and that show is all about relationships.
And there's still there. You might get your wish in some ways very soon. We'll see how things shake out as we approach the end of season 2, start of season 3.
All right, well, it looks like you have a little secret for me, Matt. But you want to tell me? And I like the fact that you're not telling me here, but that makes me that much more interested to see what we have coming up the pipe here. So
Yeah.
with all that being said, just to do a quick recap, I really really enjoyed this second half, and I almost wanted to watch the season finale, but I purposely didn't do that to actually wait until we jumped on here next week to talk about that. But with all that being said, I thought that this second half was great. It was wonderful, full of action, great writing, great guest stars, and some great twists with the Rambaldi mythos being fully spread out between various episodes in the second half of the season. And I would give the second half of the season, I would give it an 8. With that being said, what would you give the second half of the season, Matt?
I would say 8 or 8.5. This is basically Alias in its prime, where, a lot of the things it does best, they finally had settled into the groove, and they were just letting us roll with the punches of the twists and turns, the awesome action, and the great character work. So I thought, this last half of season 2 is everything I wanted, where the mythology is building, the action is building, but also the characters and the heart is still there. Lots of those great signature JJ mystery boxes and a few surprises along the way. So I really love the second half of season 2.
All right, guys. So with all that being said, I think that'll do it for this edition of Radio 815. If you want to chat with me, or if you want to, send us a line and talk to us about the show, or tell us how much we suck, you can reach us on Twitter by using the hashtag Radio815 if you want to send us any questions. If we ever get anything on there, as my colleague Matt said last week, we'll read it out on the air and we'll respond to you, even if you send us hate mail. And if Matt doesn't want to read the hate mail, I will.
There you go. Good for you. You're braver than me.
So, on the other hand, if you just want to talk to me and tell me how much I suck, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Creek Fanatic. On that same note, if the good people and the more smarter, intelligent fans that we may have want to talk to you, Matt, about Alias or anything else, where can they reach you?
Yeah, Twitter's the best spot, at Matt Crandall. But don't come at me with hate mail, because I will just mute you.
All right, guys. So with all that being said, as I say often, we'll talk back soon.